So I would like to start by thanking the sponsors who make this event possible: AbbVie, Bristol Myers Squibb, Amgen Oncology, Genentech, Karyopharm Therapeutics, Oncopeptides, Adaptive Biotechnologies, and Takeda Oncology. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our featured speakers. After their introductions, I will turn the time over to Nico to explain why he chose this topic and give a little background on his role. He will then turn the time over to Ruth, who will share her experience as a myeloma patient. Cassidy will then follow and explain the Survivorship program for those who are unfamiliar with it. After her brief introduction, we will open the meeting to a question and answer. Nico Chico O'Donnell joined the multiple myeloma program at Huntsman Cancer Institute in 2016 as its licensed clinical social worker. Before that, he was a social worker with Intermountain, primarily at LDS Hospital on their inpatient behavioral unit. He earned his Master of Social Work degree at the University of Utah. Originally from New York and Boston, Nico earned undergraduate degrees in psychology and theater from Carleton College in Minnesota. He earned most of his very modest living as a stage actor in Minneapolis and Seattle for 8 years before moving to Utah in 2006. More recently, Nico has used role play to help train physicians how to navigate especially difficult patient conversations and to entertain his 13 and 9-year-old kids. Nico, we're glad you're here with us today. Cassidy Doucette, I think that's how you pronounce it. I always practice and then I forget when I'm in the moment under the pressure. DNP APRN.
Okay, Doucette.
Thank you, Doucette. I like read it and then I'm like, that's not how you say it. Doucette, thank you. DNP APRN and FNPC is a nurse practitioner on the supportive oncology and survivorship team at Huntsman Cancer Institute. She started her medical career as an EMT working in free clinics across the Salt Lake Valley and became a registered nurse in 2010 after graduating from the University of Utah with a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. For the following 7 years, she worked as a nurse and then a nurse educator at HCI before returning to school to become a nurse practitioner. She graduated with her doctorate in nursing practice as a family nurse practitioner, summa cum laude, from the University of Utah in 2017. Certified in oncology nursing and a past member of the Clinical Planning Committee and Patient Education Committee, Cassidy has taken an active role in advocating for patients and improving clinical care. She is a member of the Oncology Nursing Society, American Academy of Nurse Practitioners, and Academic Consortium for Integrative Medicine and Health. Her graduate research was to investigate the effect of Qigong on cancer-related fatigue and quality of life as she strives to take a holistic, integrative approach to caring for her patients. She is passionate about human connection and global health and has lived and worked in communities around the world, including India and Uganda. She enjoys traveling, spending time on rivers and in the mountains, especially with her husband and dog, and gathering her community around the dinner table or a campfire. So Nico, the time is now yours to briefly introduce yourself a little bit more, explain your role at Huntsman, and then tell us why you chose this topic. And then after that, you can turn the time over to Ruth. So Nico, take the floor.
Thank you. Some of you know me. I'm the social worker for the multiple myeloma program at Huntsman. And that's a kind of unique privilege that I as a social worker have here, of working basically exclusively with multiple myeloma patients as a social worker. And I sometimes try to visualize the social worker role with regard to cancer treatment as kind of a tandem skydiver. So my job is to kind of stick close to the patient and help pull some strings for the patient, and sort of ease the journey, and be there just in case something comes up. For those people who do transplant, I kind of see transplant as a moment where things stop moving quite as fast as they do in the beginning. But I think that's a large portion of our patients who join these support groups. So I was actually talking to one of our patients, who I think might be on now, and she was just saying how she would love to hear from other people specifically about issues of survivorship. 2-3 years after diagnosis, if you're still dealing with bone pain, what's that experience like? Because that's maybe not something that is talked about that as much. So I reached out to our Huntsman's survivorship service called the Support of Oncology and Survivorship Service. And Cassidy, one of the nurse practitioners with that team, she volunteered to talk to our group. So I'm really grateful to her. So that was kind of the idea behind today's talk. But we try to, we're going to try to meet virtually every 2 months at this point, and try to have different speakers covering different topics of importance to our patients. And if you know of something or have something that you would like to, see us talk about, then shoot me a quick email or give me a call. And yeah, thanks very much for joining us today. And I so having a virtual group has its benefits and its drawbacks. One of its benefits is our ability to reach people even if they're across the country, or just not really in a great position to kind of come in to an in-person meeting. A drawback is that we don't really get as much sort of patient-to-patient interaction. And so one thing that we did the last meeting or a couple meetings ago, and I wanted to try to do it again, is to start off with at least one patient's personal experience, and just use that to kind of ground the meeting in all of our patient experiences, and maybe use that maybe as a point of departure for our conversation with Cassidy. So I asked Ruth, and she generously agreed to talk to us about her story. So I'll pass it over to Ruth now. Thanks, Ruth.
Hi. As Nico said, I think I would far prefer sitting in my lounge or out on my back deck chatting to all of you. But I'm going to start my allotted time by actually seeing if we can spend just 30 seconds of quiet. And I'm going to do this because I think we all are in varied places of our journey. Some of you might be newly diagnosed or have a loved one newly diagnosed, and so welcome to this terrible club that you never wanted to be a part of. But some of you are maybe veterans, maybe you like 10 years down from diagnosis. We're all in different spaces. So I thought we could just spend a few seconds taking some deep breaths and maybe just contemplating where each of us is on our own road. I know that's slightly awkward on a thing. You can look away from your screen, but I'm just going to do that quiet for a few seconds. Okay, I will confess that was also for me to take a few deep breaths and slow my heart rate. So as I was coming up towards this meeting, I was chatting to a friend about feeling nervous. And obviously there's the context of this strange digital platform that we are staring at strangers' little pictures on the screen. I think the second reason was perhaps the most important. it's that feeling of being in the spotlight. And I think the very last thing that I would like any of you to think is that I think in some way my story is more important than yours, because here I am speaking and all of you are muted. And that's definitely been a part of my journey, realizing how both big and small each of us is. And just to say from the beginning, I don't think any of you are any smaller or have less important a story than I do. So thank you for listening to mine. I think the third thing I was nervous about was harder to put my finger on, but it revolved around these hard mind gems that we sort of get hold of over the years after diagnosis. And in some ways, I feel like when I share these things with other people, I've shared them so many times before that they've become almost sort of a trite truism that could be written on a Hallmark card. And that's just such a terrible thought. And I just feel like we have earned those things, and we should be allowed to hold those gems in our hand and not feel like we're making them trite in any way. So I saw Audrey got to read, but I'm going to try just talk. So sorry if it doesn't progress logically, or I'm just wanting to share a little bit of my story, as I said, different to yours, and just hoping that we can connect somewhere in it and maybe give each other a little bit of courage and hope. So I'm going to start off the story by talking about my sort of key takeaway from this journey of the last 4 years. And it's not a comfortable place to start, but I'm going to dive right in and say the key for me was in finding the courage to gaze deeply at my own mortality, and to take from that the courage to face life in a different way and live differently and prioritize differently and hold on to the things I value tightly. This is a super hard thing to do. And I know that we're all in our own places, as I say, with it. But for me, it has been the route to joy, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. So I think philosophers over time have grappled with this idea of what courage is. And from Socrates to Nelson Mandela. So I'll quote Nelson Mandela. You can tell from my accent. He's my home country. And he just talked about how courage is not the absence of fear, but our ability to face it and keep moving. So I had a friend's dad kind of plop himself down beside me the one day and sort of fairly frivolously say, "So Ruth, have you figured out the meaning of life? The secret of life." Sorry, that's what he said. "Have you figured out the secret to life?" And I really took myself aback by not hesitating at all and saying, "Yes, I think I have. It's that it ends." And that's not supposed to be a depressing message for us. It's supposed to be the key to realizing why this moment is precious. Why when I sit next to my daughters on the couch, that moment is precious. And when I walk with my husband in the evening, that moment is precious. And when I speak to friends on the phone, that moment is precious, which does not by any means mean that I manage to hold on to that all the time. I love Tim McGraw's song about living like you're dying, but in all truth, at the end of most of my treatment in 2017, I was feeling stronger and getting back into some regular stuff and being handed more of the responsibility of running my household. And I described to people having re-entry wobbles, kind of like a astronaut coming back into Earth's atmosphere. Just suddenly I had to clean up the cat vomit, and I had to sort out the broken garage door, and I had to organize the car insurance. And I remember being so frustrated with that in the beginning, because I was like, my life is precious. I don't have time for these things. I have to enjoy every moment. So yes, it's always a balance, isn't it? So to go more back to the beginning of the story, as I say, I was raised in Cape Town, South Africa, barefoot, climbing trees, swimming in the ocean. in that beautiful big cosmopolitan city. I was also very fortunate to receive a good education. Our medical school works differently, and so we go to medical school for 6 years out of high school. So I started medical school at 17, graduated when I was 23. Didn't really know what in the world I was doing. I was young and had no life experience, but I also graduated into South Africa's AIDS epidemic, and so was just surrounded by death and suffering and severely ill patients from when I was really young. We had cholera outbreaks, watched people die from malaria and car accidents and drownings and you name it, all sorts of things, and of course cancer. And I think what I look back on now, I must have contemplated my own mortality, but somehow I don't think I ever really pictured it being me. So as we all know, getting that phone call, it's completely blindsided me, even though I had medical training. We lived in Alabama for 2 years. We were supposed to be temporarily in the United States. And then they enticed us up to beautiful Utah with the prospect of the snow and the mountains. And we hadn't been here a year when I started limping. And after 3 months of increasingly severe, sort of with that gray aching pain that I'm sure you all know, we got that phone call. And I had 3 little girls. They were 6, 8, and 10 at the time. And yeah, I look back on that time and just remember the fog of it. And yeah, as Nico said, the sort of chaos of that early treatment. And unfortunately, I did have some clue of what multiple myeloma was at the time. In fact, my understanding of it from medical school was, yeah, there's been so many new developments and exciting things that have happened over the last 20 years. But yeah, so to briefly tell you my treatment, I had radiation. It was not a smooth ride, basically. That's the short version. It's wonderful if you guys had smooth rides, but I had a deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary emboli, and I started on induction treatments and then heard the day before my 40th birthday that my tumor markers were doubling on treatment. And I hit that birthday thinking that I would never see another one. So landed up having 2 autologous stem cell transplants. I wasn't in remission after the first one. And yeah, have had a couple of years of wonderful remission since then. I think grief is something that we cycle through. We all tell different stories of loss. We no longer had jobs and health insurance back in South Africa, so we feel like we sort of lost our home and our family in amongst things as well. I lost any chance of practicing medicine again. I watched my girls sort of face their growing up years with the sort of imminent threat of mom's possible demise. And that's hard to see, hard to let them go as they try to let go of me through their teen years, and sort of wondering if I'll be around by the time they cycle back to being with me. So we all have those unique things. I don't know how many of you had teenagers while you were going through all of this, but yeah. One other key thing we learned was about community care, just allowing people to help. And that was just a profound thing for us. And we literally had people cleaning our home and bringing us meals and caring for our kids. And the amazing thing that was through it, we were the ones who should have been saying thank you, but we just had endless people saying thank you to us for allowing them to help. So that was an amazing experience. So I think back to that time when I was hobbling around on a cane, and that doc asked me for, my husband said, please, could you give her something for the pain? And he said, well, is it stopping you doing the things you love? And we just kind of burst out laughing and crying at the same time. I was struggling to get in and out of a car and struggling to get in and out of the shower or get dressed, you know, never mind snowboarding and mountain biking. And so, yeah, I look at that and I'm grateful every time I go out for a hike or get on a mountain bike or get on my snowboard. And again, don't feel bad if that's not where you're at or not what you're doing. But yeah, just the miracle of our treatment has given us this gift of some well time. And I recently started studying again, reinventing myself. Who knows? Who knows what happens in the future? But for now, we're going to keep on living. And yeah, so I will stop there. I don't mean for any of this to tell you how to live your lives or what you need to learn from your journey or what it needs to be for you. But I hope it is that feeling that we are not alone. Yeah.
Wow, Ruth, that I'm not gonna lie, I like literally teared up a little bit when you were talking. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for being so sincere and vulnerable and real in sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And Nico, great job in asking Ruth.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Cassidy, we'll turn the time over to you to kind of introduce the survivorship program a little bit. And then after Cassidy's done speaking, I'll give some instructions about how the interactive Q&A is going to work with on Google Meet, and then we can get started.
Sure. So hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to join you today. I was already introduced, I guess, but my name's Cassidy. I'm a nurse practitioner on the supportive oncology and survivorship team at Huntsman Cancer Hospital here in Salt Lake. And the survivorship piece is something that honestly in the cancer world is relatively new. As you all are very aware, cancer treatments and the world of oncology in general is moving at a quite rapid pace, faster for some types of cancers than others, but it is becoming much more of a chronic illness than an acute one, which is a new challenge for everybody involved, including those most intimately affected by cancer, such as all of you. So our program started as a palliative care team, mostly to support those in active treatment. We focus on symptom management and quality of life, as well as what we call goals of care. So as people are going through treatments, we do a lot of work with helping manage nausea, vomiting, pain, poor appetite, trouble sleeping, changes in mood, changes in GI function, all of these wonderful things and side effects I'm sure you are all far too familiar with. And then making sure that you understand what's going on, that you are on the same page as your medical team and have some control in decisions, and making sure that what you value and what's most important to you stays in focus. That doesn't really change much except for maybe the intensity of our conversations and discussions when someone moves into survivorship. And survivorship, just as active treatment, is an incredibly unique journey. Each of you are not like the other, and your experience and your symptoms and everything that changes in life is pretty unique to you. And so our role on the SOS team is to try to get to know you and support that process, because cancer is never something that affects only one person for a short period of time. It affects intimately our families, our communities, and if you are lucky enough to become a cancer survivor, it is still kind of this looming darkness that is in the side halls, no matter what, no matter how much we try, like Ruth said, to kind of refocus on today and appreciating life and kind of this silver lining that can come from a cancer diagnosis, where it provides a pretty sudden and profound shift in our values and our perspective. Yeah. So our role with the survivorship component is recognizing that someone's cancer journey, as well as the side effects from treatments and their cancer, doesn't just end when you have your last chemo or radiation, or you are, in complete response after a transplant. Those treatments, everything that all of you are going through or have gone through, are intense. They intimately affect every cell in your body, but they also affect your mind and your soul and your experience, which are very interconnected and play a big role. And it's really common for sometimes the expectations on ourselves that I'm done with treatment, I'm this far out, or I should be feeling better. And we have all of these intense self-expectations that we should be feeling a certain way, or we should be doing this or doing that. And it's not always helpful when, unfortunately, because cancer is quite prevalent, a lot of the oncologists get overwhelmed, and because you are considered done with active treatment, you might not be, required to come see your primary hematologist or doctors, every 3 months or 6 months or once a year. And there's kind of this floating in between where there's a lot of anxiety and fear that can happen around, okay, well, is this normal? Is that normal? What am I supposed to watch for? How do I know if something's coming back? Is what I'm experiencing because of my myeloma? Is it because of the treatments? And so that's part of the role that connecting with a survivorship provider or group, such as myself, where there's lots of other resources and communities across the states, can be helpful with, because we have that extra knowledge. I'm oncology certified, but also certified in palliative care, and that allows us to provide some education and perspective, and hopefully help people in your situations that may be dealing with ongoing side effects, and sometimes just validating those and knowing that it's normal. Some of the most normal things that any cancer survivor experience, but especially those who have gone through treatment for multiple myeloma, is pain and changes in endurance and energy, as well as mood and sleep. So kind of just learning how to manage some of those ongoing fears and anxieties of our mortality, of recurrence, of the treatment experience that we went through. And so my goal is often to try to help people continue to live as well as possible, despite all of these other things that their body is constantly trying to manage and deal with. And we do that sometimes through medications, but also through education, through different kind of mindfulness and integrative approaches, things, nutrition, sometimes as simple as getting outside once a day and taking 3 deep breaths can make a profound difference in a lot of things. And then working together with our social workers, with the primary, hematology providers, to make sure that any surveillance tests are continued. Depending on your individual treatment, particularly certain chemotherapies, have higher risks for, making sure we keep an eye on heart function moving forward, or on certain blood cell levels, or, they each have their own kind of unique risks and things that we expect to, need to keep an eye on. So yeah, I think that's a little bit longer summary of my role, but Yeah, I think it's profoundly important and valuable to have groups like this to recognize that you aren't alone, that there are definitely shared parts of your experience, but that doesn't mean that your individual thoughts and feelings and needs aren't important as well, and can be supported as best as possible through a variety of resources, this group being one of them. So
Awesome. Thank you, Cassidy. I appreciate the longer explanation because kind of like, as you said, it's new in the myeloma world, at least the survivorship program. So it's exciting to learn more about it. As I mentioned, I'm going to show you guys a little bit about how this is going to work. Just because I know Google Meet is so new for lots of people. So we have until 2 p.m. Granted, we don't have to take that whole time if it doesn't organically go that long, but I do want you to know that we do have time for you. We do have time for your questions, your discussion. But I want to show you how we can organize that since there are quite a few of us here today. So we would like, if you have a question for Cassidy, for you to click here. This is at the bottom of your screen. And you can click raise hand if you have a question or even a comment or something that you want to share. If you don't feel comfortable speaking out loud, because what will happen after you raise your hand is you'll be included in a list. The system keeps track of who raised their hand in what order, and I'll be calling on you to voluntarily unmute your microphone and speak to us. If that isn't something that you feel comfortable doing, you're also welcome to write in the chat your question, and that's going to be at the top of your screen on the right-hand side. So hopefully that's an okay introduction and or explanation is what I mean. And I would love to see, if anybody wants to raise their hand and speak, or if you have any questions for Cassidy. Now we're going to leave it open. Okay, we have John Cummings, if you want to unmute yourself and speak. And again, you unmute by clicking the microphone button. That should be at the bottom of your screen. All right, we'll give John a couple more seconds, and if it doesn't work, John, you're welcome to write your question in the chat. And if not, we'll move on. All right, well, John figures that out. Marianne Downey. Oh, hi, Marianne. Feel free to unmute yourself and talk to the group.
So I have this, it's a question on an ongoing basis that similar to what you were saying before about what is myeloma based, what is as a result of the treatments, but also how do I tell what's just ordinary being sick? Because yesterday I wasn't feeling the best. I'm in complete response currently. I'm still on treatments, obviously, but yesterday I had a bit of sweats and I was just feeling really nauseous, and I kept thinking, am I supposed to call the doctor? What am I supposed to do? What are the conditions under which I should be worried? I don't, and because normally speaking, I'll just go to bed and sleep it off, and then tomorrow you'll be feeling better, which is a little bit of what happened, but I don't know how to tell the difference.
Yeah, Marian, that's a really good question, and one that you're not alone in wondering about. What I normally recommend to people is anything that doesn't improve or seem to go away or get better with the normal things that you would do warrants, further investigation. So I do not think that, having a fever or feeling like you have a cold warrants immediate, concern and need to get in to see your hematologist or urgent care. if it's a cold and you're having symptoms that are worsening instead of getting better and last longer than, 5 to 7 days, then I think it could be worth, getting an appointment to get checked out and see how you're doing and make sure everything's okay. That being said, if you're ever in a situation where, you start to have pain and the pain just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and you're trying to do the things you normally do to help it and it's not getting better, then that should be investigated. If you're having fevers and they are high fevers and they're persistent, more than just 1 to 2 days, I'd say, for like high persistent fevers, then it, could be worth getting checked out either just at a primary care doctor's office or an urgent care. Because of ongoing treatments and your past treatments, anyone is at higher risk for normal infections becoming more serious, but that doesn't mean that they will become more serious. You do still have, some parts of your immune system that are functioning normally, and it's expected that you'll get, the common cold or even the flu as anyone else might. But it's also expected that course shouldn't be any more severe. Like if you're experiencing these more severe or prolonged symptoms, then that's when I would say it's worth checking into. I know that's kind of vague, and it's just hard because there's so many variations of, how sick we feel really depends on our personal definition of things. But again, that just goes back to, yourself the best. And so it's honestly can be really beneficial to kind of take a few breaths and think to yourself like, okay, is this something that I've experienced before and I know I can get over and through, or am I really worried about this for whatever reason? And if you're ever not sure, it's fine to call. I mean, we have lots of nurses and triage nurses that can kind of run through your symptoms, ask what's going on, and then give you some direction about, no, I think you're okay to take some Tylenol, make sure you're drinking plenty of fluids, rest at home. Or actually, yeah, that sounds concerning. I think you should come be seen.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great answer. Deborah asks, do you have any suggestions on how to deal with digestive issues? And this is actually a question that we got even before the meeting that we wanted to talk about. So I'm glad that she asked that.
Yeah, I'm happy to share some printed information because it's hard to remember everything, and I'm sure my voice is already wah 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 to like the majority of people on this crowd. So I'm happy to share some kind of print resources after this talk. Digestion is really tricky. So it's also one of those things that takes time and attention to yourself because everyone's digestion is so different. We all have such a different balance of like bacteria and things that we respond well to and don't respond well to. And it can be annoying and time consuming, but a food journal can actually provide some really great insight into helping us recognize like, oh, I've sort of noticed that like these foods I don't tend to tolerate as well, and these ones I do. If you're on ongoing treatment, if you've received heavy chemotherapy, stem cell transplants, or have had lots of antibiotics or are continuing on antibiotics, that inherently really lowers the natural bacterial balance in our gut. So making sure that you are eating things that have some natural probiotics for some people can be helpful. That's often like yogurts with yogurts, it's important to pay attention to sugar. Some yogurts are mostly sugar, and things that are really high in sugar tend to irritate our gut more. So I would say more yogurts that don't have a lot of added sugars. Kefir is like a type of almost like fermented yogurt. Things like kimchi, which is like a fermented cabbage, anything that's pickled. Tempeh is like a fermented soybean. Those types of things are natural products that can help introduce sort of some of the normal bacterial balance and can help with digestion for a lot of people, not everyone. For me, for example, they kind of do the opposite. So it really is just something to think about and be aware of. There are certain digestive spices that are really beneficial and have been shown to kind of help calm the gut and promote good digestion. They are generally foods that you often find in like Indian cuisine, but can be found in lots of other cuisines also. And I'll provide a list, but they're things like ginger, fennel, cardamom. Those are kind of the top ones, I think, cinnamon. And so using these certain spices in your food can help. And then recognizing that if you are feeling like you're having lots of GI upset, things that are easier to digest are normally foods that are cooked or steamed or blended. I sometimes refer to them as kind of somewhat pre-digested, where, you know, our body relies on chewing to start the digestive process, but then it's up to all sorts of kind of gastric juices and things that our pancreas and our gallbladder dump into our intestinal tract, and then our intestines themselves to kind of break down our food to a point where we can easily absorb them. That work is a lot harder with like raw vegetables and red meats, raw nuts. Those three categories in particular tend to be more challenging for our bodies to digest. They just take more effort. So soaking nuts, like putting them in some water in the refrigerator overnight, can be a nice way to make nuts easier to digest, because nuts are a great source of other proteins, omega-3, vitamins, and you know, other things that are good for gut health. So, and then you know, not to say you can never have like a raw salad, but just, you know, be aware that sometimes the raw veggies are harder for us to digest. So if it's a sensitive belly day, maybe stay away from the salad, or make sure that you're really chewing it extremely well.
Awesome. Thank you. We have Kelly. Kelly, if you want to unmute yourself and speak to the group.
Yeah, hi. I have gained a fair amount of weight since my diagnosis. And so I'm wondering, what is a reasonable diet and exercise program for someone that has multiple myeloma? I'm sure it's different for everyone, but even just like, this is too much, you know, doing this much dieting and this much exercise is too much, and this is about the minimum you should do, kind of range.
I wish that our we have a program, multiple programs at Huntsman, one called the New You, another one called the Power Program, where you get an initial kind of evaluation and assessment with one of our physical medicine doctors, as well as meet with a nutritionist and a physical therapist. And they kind of work with you on an individual basis to create a good plan. I think it's challenging, Kelly, because you're right. Everybody is so different that what is going to be manageable and work for you is not going to be necessarily the same as for everyone else. And I know this, I keep going back to this, but it's really important to pay attention to you. So if you I always suggest that people start small, like try to just make one dietary change and set one kind of body movement goal a week. And, you know, that is a fine and good place to start as a minimum, and then kind of increase and step up as you feel like you can. If you start with a goal of, you know, for some people, that goal is I'm going to walk to the end of my driveway and high five my mailbox every morning. And that's a lot for some people. Like, that is a big deal. For other people, a patient that I just talked to recently, who is, you know, just 3 months out of transplant, I think, is walking a mile a day. And that's where she like is struggling to kind of go beyond that. But a mile a day is great. It's the type of movement also is very individual based. So walking can be great for some people. Huntsman has a lot of free online classes, and there's a variety of virtual things that are available that I recommend checking out, because losing weight can happen from just walking a mile or two every day, and, you know, paying attention to what you eat. But it can also happen through things like, my doctoral research, as was mentioned before, was on Qigong, which is a form of Tai Chi. And, you know, if you're someone where physical exercise isn't necessarily doable, there's lots of ways that that can be shifted to like chair movements, or, you know, resistance training with weights. And so I'm sorry that I can't necessarily give you that kind of minimum or maximum ceiling, because it really is going to be on a person by person basis. But what I do recommend you look into, Kelly, is I don't know which area you're in or which treatment team you're connected to, but there are definitely ways to visit with either like a personal trainer, a nutritionist, a physical therapist. And sometimes, even if it's just one visit, they can provide some good direction for you individually as like a let's start here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cassidy. There was a question, if they aren't being seen at Huntsman, do they still have access to those free online resources?
Yes.
Great. And then I wanted to
you can get to them through, if you just Google Huntsman Cancer Institute Wellness Center, it brings you to our like HB Wiggins something Wellness and Integrative Health Center. I'm actually on the front of that page doing Qigong, which makes me Google every time I go to that website. And if you scroll down, I think midway in the page, you're near the bottom, is a link to their kind of free online classes through a YouTube channel that was started this past year.
That's great. We can include that in the follow-up email that we do. It's going to be 24 to 48 hours after this event finishes, that we send the recording and the slides and stuff, but we can include that in our resources for sure. And someone actually, I think, just shared it in the chat, which is great. I also shared, for those that are interested, for more of the myeloma side of things, we do have a nutrition and wellness chapter that meets every month, where we invite experts to come speak on what are the best diets for multiple myeloma patients. And then we have a fitness for myeloma chapter as well. And it's funny, our session next month is actually Qigong, so that's fun. Fun connection. But I put those into the links to subscribe to those in the chat as well, so that you guys can participate in that if it interests you. All right, we have another question. Oh, and we will include the digestive information, that if you just want to send over to me, Cassidy, those hard copies that you were talking, or not hard copies, but printed copies that you were talking about, then we can get those out in the follow-up email as well. All right, Diana says that she's 6+ months post-auto transplant. Where can she find a schedule of vaccinations that she should begin?
So are you a patient at Huntsman? I didn't see the name.
Yes, I am.
Oh, yes. So Diana, they can, if you call the nurse line, the myeloma nurse line, they can go through the vaccination schedule with you.
Okay.
Do you have that number?
I'm not sure I do.
So it's for Huntsman patients, it's 801-587-4687.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the nurse line you said? Or
Yeah,
what's
that's the
that?
nurse line for multiple myeloma.
Okay, I'm just putting in the chat. Make sure that I wrote the right number. I think I dictated, or I wrote what you dictated, but I might be wrong.
Okay.
All right. Gary, if Gary Cox wants to unmute himself and share.
Yeah, I've got a question. When things seem like they're going wrong, and of course they always go wrong after business hours, how do you decide where to go? Do you go to Instacare? Do you try to go to Huntsman? I mean, my last choice is always the U emergency room, because anybody who's ever been there understands the experience that has. How do you decide where you can go?
That's a really good and hard question, Gary. I think it depends on where you are and what symptom you're experiencing. If it's something that is, severe, needs immediate attention, like you're really worried that you're progressively having a harder and harder time breathing, or you have like severe pain and it just keeps getting worse and nothing's making it better, or you worry that you're having like a heart attack, then I don't care where you go to the closest place that has a medical provider that can assess and support you by giving some oxygen or pain meds, or doing an assessment. If it is something that is a little bit more mild and you feel like you'll be okay through the night until like Huntsman has our acute care center is open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's always, my preferred place for people to come if they can. If you're outside of those hours, I recognize and you're not alone with the challenges of the experience of going through the university emergency department. But they're unfortunately our closest connection here. That doesn't mean that a different emergency department won't be able to connect and contact our providers and provide good care to you. So I guess ultimately my summary recommendation is whatever is closest and you feel comfortable with.
Where is the acute care facility at Huntsman? I've been treated there since 2014. I didn't even know it existed.
No way. Yeah, so it's in a clinic. It's on the second floor right next to the infusion room. And it has moved locations a few times as Huntsman continues to expand and grow over the past decade. I guess it's only really been around in a thing for the last 6 years or so. But yeah, you get connected there, Gary, by first, normally it's calling the nurse line, and they kind of do a triage and then connect with the Huntsman Acute Care. HAC is now its new name. And it's not like a walk-in, you have to have an appointment, but they do like same day immediate evaluations.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add one other thing? So if it's after hours and you're feeling like it's really kind of borderline whether you want to go into the emergency room or not, but that seems like a real possibility that you might need an emergency room, you can call, but it's not super urgent, like Cassidy said. No heart attacks, or you can call the main Huntsman number. Is 801-587-7000, and then ask to speak to the BMT doctor on call, and then tell them what you're dealing with, and they can advise you. That's for things, that are where you really do feel like this could be an emergency room kind of situation.
Yeah. Thanks, Nico. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Great. This is so fun. I don't know, for me, just being able to get this live answers and feedback is great. So thank you guys for being here. John Cummings is next. So John, if you want to unmute. I know you were having trouble unmuting earlier, so if you do want to write your question in the chat, if you can't unmute, that is also an option. While we're waiting for John, Mike, if you want to unmute and speak.
Yes, I have plasma cytoma, and I am supposed to get very heavy chemotherapy for 4 days. But my lab reports, my platelets are very low. Basically, my WBC, my HGB, my HCT, and platelets are low. What can I do? What can I eat to increase the level of this?
That's a really hard question, Mike, and I'm sure it can be stressful when those counts are really low, because it prevents you from being able to safely get more of the chemotherapy, because more chemo is just going to make those levels even lower. If you're in a clinic or a hospital, oftentimes we
Sorry, I am actually hospitalized right now.
Okay.
And they're going to start the chemo anyways, because my plasma cytoma is very dangerous. It's next to my right ear, and it's swollen big time. So they have to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so they might have talked to you about receiving some blood products. So sometimes, like the platelets, for example, we can transfuse and help boost temporarily. Unfortunately, I don't know of any particular foods or drinks that can help stimulate that. It's normally time and trying to make sure that you're eating as good of a kind of well-rounded nutrition as possible, and drinking water. I mean, hydration sounds so simple, but it's really valuable. I'm sure they're also giving you hydration through an IV.
Yeah, I am getting that.
Yeah.
So how much water should I drink throughout the day?
If they're giving you things through the IV, also just drink, sipping on water and other drinks as you feel like you're thirsty and can tolerate is fine.
Like just throughout the day, just sip water.
Yeah, water, sometimes things like Gatorade or Propel, Powerade, things that have some electrolytes help keep you hydrated even better. But that's you're in luck, because they're giving you all those good things through your IV right now, probably.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry so much about doing it on your own, but it can still be helpful. And especially when you're not in the hospital, and for anyone else that feels like they get dehydrated easily, drinking, adding kind of electrolyte powder to your water can just sort of help hydrate you faster. water follows sugar and salt. And so if we have a little sugar and salt in the water, it's easier for our body to kind of grab and pull in and keep in our blood vessels.
So when I leave the hospital, I have read that like liver would help. That's not true? So no, like
Eating liver?
liver.
Yeah, I don't know. It might be that liver is often high in certain vitamins and minerals, including iron. And so that might be one of the reasons that was recommended. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have one more question. Once I go to remission and that they, get rid of this plasmacytoma, I am due for transplant. I live in San Diego, California. If I want to have I used to live in Utah, Salt Lake City, and if I want to do my procedure in Huntsman Myeloma Center, what would be the process? Like with insurance, how can I like request that? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so there's a contact person named Chris Moss. He's our new patient coordinator for all new Huntsman patients and all patients who are looking to consult about possible transplant at some point. So what I don't have his number offhand, but
Chris Moss, Moss.
Yeah, and I can put his number also in this packet of information that we'll send out after this meeting. Would that work?
Yeah, that should work. I have one more question. You guys have started the CAR T cells yet?
Yes, they just got FDA approved, and
Right.
so we're doing our first CAR Ts right now outside of a clinical trial. We've been doing within clinical trials. We've been doing CAR Ts with a few myeloma patients at Huntsman, but
okay.
now we're
So
even
I have
doing it
to.
outside, covered by insurance.
Okay, so this number, Chris Moss, is going to be there.
Yeah.
For me later to get the number.
It's actually, they just put it in the chat right now, Mike. So if you want to look in the chat and I'll make sure that you get that, okay?
Okay.
It's good to see you again.
Okay. Otherwise, if I couldn't get it, can I call the directory there and ask for Chris Moss?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We wish you the best.
Thank you.
Okay, George Finch, we have you're next.
Yes, hi. My sister was just newly diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and it occurred to me that maybe she should have a medic alert bracelet. Would that help down the line to identify her as somebody who is at risk? Does that make any sense?
It does, George. So the medical alert bracelet will be helpful if your sister has specific wishes that would be important in the event of an emergency. For example, if her heart were to stop or she was to stop breathing and she absolutely does not want, attempts at CPR or to be intubated and on a ventilator, then sometimes having that information easily available if something was to happen when she was outside of a hospital setting and an ambulance was called, or if she develops has other medical problems that would be helpful for emergency personnel to know, like diabetics. It's really helpful to know, because if they're found passed out and they have a diabetic bracelet, we know, okay, this is probably related to blood sugar. Unfortunately, multiple myeloma on a med alert bracelet won't mean much to most people. They just won't know how to deal with it or handle it. So I don't think that would be helpful.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question. How many are having to do dialysis because of myeloma? This is an interesting question because, yeah, I'll let you, I mean, I'll let the experts answer, but I think it's an interesting question.
I don't know if I have a good answer to that question. My guess is that you're maybe referring to kidney problems and damage that developed from, some of the harsher medications or chemos or treatments that you went through, that have now led to needing kidney support through dialysis. How common that is, I'm not sure. Is there if you're willing to kind of follow up question, is that a question in hopes of kind of connecting with other people who are maybe going through dialysis, or are there other, reasons or things that you're hoping to find out?
And I would add, if you don't mind me adding, and again, I want to make clear that I am not a nurse or a medical professional, but I would add a lot of people, as a side effect of their actual myeloma is attacking their kidneys and their internal organs. And that is usually why people can even be on dialysis before they even know that they have myeloma, because if they recognize first those kidney malfunctions and diseases that require dialysis as a cause of their actual myeloma. So like Cassidy said, George Allen asked the question. I would love to get a little bit more follow-up on that, George, just to better understand your question so that she can answer it in a more clear way. Marianne did share, though, that she was referred to Dr. Christoph Westenfelder at the Utah Hospital for her kidneys, and he got her kidney issues under control. So that's great news. We still have a couple of moments if somebody else has a question or a comment that they want to share within our group. We would be happy to hear from you, whether that is in the chat or whether that is by raising your hand. I am going to launch. Go ahead, Cassidy.
Sorry, I was just saying, I if there's other questions that come up, Nico has graciously offered to kind of write them down and let me know, and I can include a response. I unfortunately am seeing people in the hospital today and have to leave, but I really appreciate all of you tolerating my wah and being here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassidy.
Thank you. Thank you, Cassidy.
So it looks like George did say that he found the myeloma was found in the kidney. So that is, again, this is not medical advice, but that is very common in patients that I interact with and that I see, is that one of the symptoms, we'll say, of the actual myeloma itself is that it attacks organs, including the kidneys, and this is reason for dialysis. Now, some people have found, and again, this is only through personal experience that I'm sharing this, that they didn't need to continue their dialysis after their chemo treatment started working against the myeloma that was attacking their kidneys. That being said, consulting a kidney doctor, as Marianne recommended, is extremely important. Getting in touch, even more important, is getting in touch with a multiple myeloma specialist. And there are multiple myeloma specialists at Huntsman. And we recommend they don't even have to take over your care completely. They can work with your local hematologist, oncologist, but seeing that multiple myeloma specialist, studies from the Mayo Clinic have shown that it adds 2 years to your life if you see the specialist instead of just consulting your local oncologist. So I think, the more people you can have on your healthcare team, including that kidney doctor, is extremely important, and we wish you the very best as you work on that. So Kelly had a question about, is there a way to determine if the fatigue is due to treatment, cancer, or some other factor?
I think that's a good question to write down and pass along to Cassidy, or maybe Dr. Sporov.
Mhm.
As a social worker, I think it's very important to ask these questions. So I would help people. I would help people formulate the question and get it to the right person, but that right person is not me.
And I would, again, this is not medical advice, but I would say it's pretty hard to determine where it's coming from initially. And so I think it would require further studies and, again, consults with doctors to see. Marianne, did you have something that you wanted to share?
Just to say that it is one of the side effects of Revlimid. If you're on Revlimid, it is one of the most common side effects of Revlimid. Just adding that piece.
No, that's great. Yeah. Thank you, Marianne. And actually, we have this program on HealthTree Cure Hub, which is one of the products or programs that we have within the HealthTree Foundation. And it's called Patient Solutions. And basically it's patients reporting different side effects that they've had, and then patients contributing, okay, what solutions did you have to these side effects? And it's actually amazing to see this patient solutions program grow, because it's just like that, Marianne, where, oh, I'm really tired today. Oh, are you on Revlimid? That could be why, or, hey, by exercising every day, I actually got rid of my fatigue. And I think I'll include a link to the patient solutions as well, so that you're able to see it and interact with it, because I think it's just a great way to collaborate together as myeloma patients and even caregivers to find solutions to these side effects. Ruth shared an awesome stat from a reputable site. She says that about 50% of patients have kidney impairment at diagnosis of multiple myeloma, and 5% require dialysis because of it. So that's a very interesting stat. Thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to quickly launch a poll. So I don't, unfortunately, have a slide to show you how to access the polls, but I'll try to explain it the best that I can. So unfortunately, if you're on a mobile device or you're on a tablet, it doesn't work, the polling system, because Google Meet is kind of dumb like that, if I'll be honest. But if you are on a laptop computer, I'd love for you to participate in this poll. You're going to get there by going to the top of your screen. To the right of the chat is, if you hover over it, it says activities. It's a square, a circle, and a triangle. If you click that, you'll see a list of different things, including polls. And if you click polls, then you'll be able to see the actual poll and be able to contribute to that. I'm just simply asking where you're from, because I'm curious to see where our friends are from today. Whether you're from northern Utah, central Utah. I didn't really know how to put where I live, which is like the Lehigh, Bluffdale, Salt Lake area. So I put central Utah. I don't even know if that's a thing, but that's what I put. And then southern Utah, Nevada, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, or other. No matter where you're from, I'm really glad that you're joining us here today, but it just helps me to know where you're from, especially because we are planning an in-person event for those that feel comfortable. This will be outside, and we will social distance, and it's going to be at the end of June, so we still have some time. But we'd love to know where the best place is to host this event and get together, and we're really excited about being able to get together, because it's been a long COVID year, very long COVID year. So getting to know where you're from. Also, it's just fun to see, as we're gathered together, where everybody's from. So thank you for participating in that, and I'll keep that live. And okay, I see it says Swamp Beaver, but I don't think that's your actual name. If it is, that's awesome. But if you want to unmute yourself and speak to the group.
No, sorry, it's Ty Huffman.
No, it's okay. Hi, Ty.
I didn't even know that was on there. So this was maybe for like Ruth or somebody who's been a while with this. I'm a month out of transplant, and it has went actually pretty well for me, I think, compared to a lot of people. But it's been basically since my diagnosis 8 months. It's just been like a catastrophe. And I'm wondering, when you get through this, when you kind of get a little bit of health back, does it improve quite a bit, like just overall life, or does it kind of stay on this roller coaster?
It's all downhill from there. No. Was that Ty? Sorry, I didn't quite catch your name.
Ty Huffman, that's right. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for asking. As I say, I had 2 transplants. So my second one knocked me a million times more than my first. So I'm grateful that you only are doing one. I look at, so I had my transplants 2017. I kind of think of 2017 as my seriously focused on medical treatment, everything time. And then sort of 2018, I kind of paid more attention to my nutrition and my movement and my sleep and all of those things. And then I kind of say 2019 was this really centering myself sort of emotionally and spiritually. And I use that just as a sort of description of I definitely had the great fortune of just feeling better and better and stronger and stronger. So yeah, definitely not. I mean, that fatigue after transplant is mind-numbing. It's mind-numbing. And I certainly struggled with viral infections over the first year, and I battled last winter as well. But yeah, I mean, I've been super well since COVID. I mean, one of the bonuses of COVID, now everybody's wearing masks. I don't get every cold and RSV and para-influenza and everything that is coughing or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I genuinely am kind of fitter and stronger than I felt in a decade, probably. So I do think it's possible to work your way up very gradually, listening to your body, as Cassidy said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
And I was
Ty, I don't know if you saw. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to tell George that I got one of those medical ID bracelets. I had a lot of my rib degradation on the left side, and so I put the nurse line and my name and date of birth, and that I was on blood thinner, just so that they could call the nurse line and give them my name and date of birth and get what they needed if they needed it. And that's all I have.
No, that's great. Thank you. Ty, they've also, Marianne was saying in the chat that it improves a ton, and she can now walk 20,000 steps again, and she's 8 months after stem cell transplant. And I can tell you just from knowing hundreds of patients that it gets a lot better. So
okay,
hopefully that hope at the end of the tunnel that you are on. Just so you're aware, for those of you who don't or didn't participate in the poll, I don't think it lets you see unless you participate, which is dumb. But Northern Utah, we have several people, Central Utah and Southern Utah, and then we have some in Nevada, Colorado, Wyoming, none in Montana yet, and then some people from other places. So it's been so fun to join together, and I really do thank you for your time, for contributing to this group, and I hope that you enjoyed this session as much as I did. I do events almost every single day, but this one has really stood out to me. Just the honesty and openness and ability to get quick feedback from a healthcare professional. This has been an amazing event, so I hope you guys have appreciated the time that we've shared. And Nico, incredible job at organizing this. So thank you very much, Nico, for doing that. I'm going to end with just a couple of announcements. So if you'll just bear with me for a couple more minutes and then we'll be done. So yeah, again, thank you for your participation. I really appreciate you. And Cassidy, please tell Cassidy she did a great job, Nico. And Ruth, thank you for your story as well. I mentioned that it says next month because, is it May this month?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. I like woke up this morning not knowing what month it is. Okay, it's May. Next month is June. It won't be until the end of June that we come together, but we would like to do an in-person, we'll call it a picnic. And we will have a speaker there. Hopefully, more details are to come as Nico and I plan it together and as we determine, where is best and when is best. And we promise to keep you all tuned. We have your emails because you registered, so we'll make sure to let you guys know. And if you can come, great. And if you don't feel comfortable or can't come, we'll hope to catch you next time. You may be interested in other myeloma crowd community events that we have coming up. Tuesday, May 11th at 6:30 Pacific is our SoCal Myeloma Community Chapter. And Jenny Ahlstrom, who's the founder of the Myeloma Crowd by HealthTree, will be answering questions about her journey and also about why she created the foundation and about myeloma in general, because Jenny is very well versed after 11 plus years as a patient and as a founder of a myeloma nonprofit. She has a lot of knowledge in the myeloma world. Thursday, May 13th is our caregiver chapter event. We're going to be talking about how to boost your physical and emotional health through food as a caregiver, and registered dietitian Katie Roswell will be sharing information with us. May 14th at 4 p.m. Eastern is our immunotherapy treatment, Knowing Your Myeloma Therapy, and we're going to be discussing Blenrep. Dr. Josh Richter, he's from New York. He's a multiple myeloma specialist, and he will be sharing about Blenrep and who's it for and how to use, when it's used, and things like that. Tuesday, May 18th, we will have Dr. Nina Shah, who is a multiple myeloma specialist from UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. She's going to be talking about the practical approach to the newest FDA-approved CAR T therapy. So we talked a little bit about CAR T today. It's available at Huntsman, which is super exciting. But what is it? What exactly is the procedure? Who is it for? How can you sign up for this procedure, or for this therapy, excuse me? Those are the kind of practical questions that we're going to be answering in Dr. Shah's presentation on the 18th. And then the 19th will be the Connect with the Myeloma Crowd chapter, tracking your key labs on HealthTree Cure Hub. HealthTree Cure Hub is another one of the programs that I was mentioning that we have created here at the HealthTree Foundation. Our main goal is to make your life easier, to make your myeloma journey easier. And so that's why we have created a tool in which you can enter all of your labs from all of your various doctors so you can better efficiently talk to your doctors and understand what's going on with you and your myeloma. Anyway, so don't miss that event on the 19th. Thanks again to our sponsors, AbbVie, Bristol Myers Squibb, Amgen Oncology, Genentech, Karyopharm Therapeutics, Oncopeptides, Adaptive Biotechnologies, and Takeda Oncology. And thank you again for helping us build a strong myeloma crowd community. I appreciate each of you, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.